Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hacking HR's People Analytics second edition. It's a global event, and we are always so happy to host this. And please do drop us a short note in the comments. Just let us know where you're watching us. It's always good to see your short notes, and it also reassures us that technology is up and running. My name is Minola Jacques. I am your co-host for this summit. And today's is a special day. First and foremost, we debut this summit. Second, I do have the joy and the privilege of co-hosting this with Barbara. Now, Barbara is our newest Hacking HR colleague. She's taking care of us backstage. She's our tech and logistics whisperer for the summit. So please do make sure you wish her a warm and loving Hacking HR welcome. And last but not least, probably because the title of our first conversation today is anticipating the future, and that might trigger a lot of feelings. I also want to take a second and really acknowledge and appreciate the fact that on some time zones still, we do celebrate today the World Mental Health Day. For those of you who take time and extra effort to join us from time zones where it is already tomorrow, just join in the acknowledging of today being a special day. So without further ado, I will ask Barbara to help me and bring our panelists on stage. So we have a long-standing Hacking HR friend and supporter with us. Welcome, Anuj. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Minola. Same here. Great to see you again.
I do believe you're on one of those time zones when it's already tomorrow, isn't it?
It's about to be tomorrow in some time.
So thank you so very much for going the extra mile to join us today. And because there are just times and days when life happens more intensely than anticipated, we will have a fireside chat set up for this conversation to kick off our summit. So it's so good to have you with us. I just want to make sure that I do read the entire name of our panel, which is Anticipating the Future, Applying Predictive Analytics for Strategic Decision Making. Quite a mouthful of buzzwords and words that, trigger interest and so many interpretations. But let's ease into the topic. And I would really invite you to shortly describe yourself. And if you can share a story that is related to your start into people analytics overall.
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joining from across the world, whichever time zone you are in. My name is Anuj Kathuria. After having spent 21 years in corporate life and heading multiple different organizations as head of HR or chief talent officer, I started my own organization called Cognito, which specifically works in the area of HR digitization, culture, and HR transformation. Now, Manila, the topic itself is so invigorating, and it is something that I think everyone is trying to grapple their heads with. But the journey of it, I believe, started decades and decades ago. It's not something new. The term analytics is very old. If you look at the history of work and the history of HR from the time it was called the personnel department way back in the 1950s, 60s, 50s and 60s, and beyond that, uh, we've gone through multiple different rechristenings, human capital, HRM, whatever. The analytics piece has been a common one. The difference is we have crossed multiple stages in the last 70 to 100 odd years.
Mm.
My first memory or recollection of the term analytics goes back when I started my job way back in 2001 with IBM. At that time, what we used to do, uh, I'm sure many companies still use that, a term called dashboards. It's only after a decade I realized that dashboards are nothing but post-mortem analysis of what really has happened, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. You can't do anything about it. It's really happened. And it was one of my opportunities where I was assisting my HR head for a board meeting. And we were asked a bunch of questions for which we had no clue how to answer those.
Mm.
The questions were so incisive. And that led me to think that fine, we have data with us, but what sense are we making out of data? Are we able to read it, contextualize it, give us something that perhaps helps us to plan our strategy better, look at our HR blueprint in a better manner, or for that matter, correlate certain KPIs to see. See, dashboards are always descriptive. They tell you what has happened. They
Mm.
never tell you why it happened. And at that time, talking about, we were looking at, okay, is there a way to figure out why things happened the way they happened? Could there have been a better way to avoid it? Whether you look at employee turnover, whether it is employee engagement surveys, whether it is number of people who are in a specific benchmark of performance, or whether it is uh, infant attrition. I heard that term way back in 2001. People who are joining the organization and leaving within a span of 6 months. We had that data, but we didn't have a clue as to why things are happening the way things are happening.
Mm.
Because unfortunately, at that time, what we call today our HR information systems or HR platforms did not provide that level of analysis. We did not have those kind of tools. The only, and you will be surprised to know 90% of our work happened in Microsoft Excel. So that was something which was really, really helpful to us. And if you knew Excel, you were the king in terms of, and the term analytics was not there, to be honest. It was called with different names, mostly
Mm.
dashboards and post-mortem analytics. And I remember one of my CEOs telling me, people have died and you are telling me they have died and you have no reason to tell me and you have no clue why they died. So what do you want me to do? Why are you wasting my time? Go and
Mm.
figure out a way if you can prevent deaths. Then come in this room. Otherwise, you don't deserve a table in this room. And
Yeah.
that got me thinking that is there a way we can do something better? I think
Mm.
that was my first twist and first learning from what we today call as analytics.
Yeah. I am quite sure that Excel is still quite a high aristocracy in many companies at the moment. I see quite a lot of people who joined us over the past couple of minutes. So a wholehearted welcome to all of you. And please also do consider the comments as your own conversation space. Be part of this. Both Anuj and myself, we will keep an eye on your comments and we will bring highlights and questions into our conversation. Um, it's so funny. I was rereading a book these days. I'm preparing a workshop for work, and I'm rereading this amazing book. It's called Using Scenarios, written by a guy called Thomas Chernak. I might be mispronouncing his name terribly. Um, and he starts the book by advocating for the fact that we go into the pitfall of assuming that how we build scenarios it is what creates magic, whereas magic gets created by how we use them. Nevertheless, so many people are completely obsessed, with how we build scenarios and almost completely ignore how we use them. And there's this wonderful advice from scenario planners and scenario framing thought leaders that say, look, I would spend 1/3 of the time building a scenario and 2/3 of the time actually using it and testing it and refining it. And I was thinking this is equally true if we look at, change plans, which is my professional love, doing change work. But it so resonates with me when I also think about data and statistics and how we collect data and how we use data. So what are your thoughts about this? Collecting data and using data. Is there a golden ratio?
So, Minola, you've asked a $1 billion question, and I'm sure the world's best data scientists also would not be able to agree on either or standpoint. And there's a reason for that. And I'm speaking it very specifically with respect to HR. See, one needs to understand why you need to collect data and what data you need to collect for that.
Mm,
Now, which comes first? Do you collect data and then decide, or do you first decide what do I need the data for?
mm,
Unfortunately, it's taken the world a little longer than anticipated to formulate what we call the analytics journey. Now, there are four specific parts to that, and some versions you would see it called by a three-step journey. So, I will try and talk about it in brief and then try to weave in some examples over there. See the first point. Uh, if you look at classification one, there are four stages of analytics: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Now, descriptive is the post mortem piece, which I was speaking about, which tells you what happened. Diagnostic talks about why did it happen. Predictive is about what is likely to happen. And then you have prescriptive. What can we do about what's likely to happen? Now, it's taken the world a lot of time to come to this. Now, that's one classification you would see in certain online journals or analytics books or uh, MBA courses. The other, which in fact I grew up and I've used, which is a little bit more simpler. Uh, there is hindsight analytics, there is insight analytics, and there is foresight analytics. Now, hindsight is nothing but the postmortem piece.
mm,
Insight is a combination of both. It tells you a bit about more about diagnostic and some about predictive as well. Prescriptive falls in the category of foresight. Now, data, how much data, what data, there are perennial problems with that. And the problem is not in the mind of the thinker or the
mm.
HR strategist or the person who's doing this. The problem is also with the kind of systems that we have. Do they have the capability to even record that data? Let me give you an example. And this dates back about 6 years, 5 or 6 years. I was working with Reliance Industries Limited and was given the charter to lead HR digitalization. Now, there's a difference between digitization and digitalization. When you move a manual process to systems, it's plain simple digitization. The ask was much beyond that. It was let's extract the value out of digitization. Now you have to look at all the moments that matter from the time someone is a potential candidate till the time he or she becomes an alum of the organization. Now, initially, we thought, yeah, I guess there are people asking, are they muted in the chat?
Yeah, I saw. I think Barbara can answer that, and if you can just let us know whether you can hear us or not as we move on. Let's keep talking. I mean, worst case scenario,
Yeah,
the recording will be available.
yeah. So, continuing that. Now, the first reactions, oh, it's pretty simple. We just need to map the moments that matter across this lifetime, and I had put some business analysts on the job to create employee journeys, and it took us about 2, 3 months to uh, figure out what the employee journeys were. And with respect to then started the process of mapping that for each step in the journey, are we capturing data or are we not capturing data? If we
Mm-hmm.
are capturing data, is it manual or is it semi-manual or is it completely automated? All this was done in 3, 4 months' time. And we thought, oh, bingo, we have done our job. We are there. We have landed on the moon.
Mm.
It's then you realize that it is not just about data collection. It's about how does that data speak to each other. And that's when we realized the current systems do not support that interface. So let me give an example to that. I'm sure on this session we have many people who are HR business partners or who come from talent acquisition space. Now, in many organizations, when we hire people, there's a process, right? You would source, you would screen, you would interview, you will go through compensation decisions and give the offer letter. A part of the interview screening process is also assessments, psychometric assessments or assessment centers or different, whether you do a MBTI or you do a DISC or you do a Conferry or SHL or Hogan, whatever you do. The question we were faced with, we are collecting so much data about a candidate before he or she is joining in. We know his strengths, we know his or her weaknesses. Where does that data, what happens to that data? Is it sitting in a garbage can somewhere or
Mm.
just used for the heck of sitting? Or are we using that data to create developmental interventions? Does that data point speak to the learning and talent development team? Or, for that matter of fact, when somebody does succession planning or creates bench strength in the organization and a potential and somebody a potential successor leaves the organization or a critical role leaves the organization, does that data speak with the talent acquisition data or not?
Mm.
And we realize they do not. The HR platforms or systems do not provision for that because most of them, the independent modules of learning, talent, learning, employee relations do not talk to each other in most. In some they do, but to a great degree they cannot. And there's a reason for that because the context of everybody's organization is different. The employee journeys, the employee experience journey that one architects are very, very different.
Mm.
So, how do we solve this mammoth problem? So, it's not about just figuring out, okay, let's collect all the data you can about an employee. Rather, it's about being very specific about what your journey is, then figuring out what data you want and how does that data talk to each other. And
Mm.
that is what a true systems of record to a systems of intelligence movement is. So let me give an example. Many people use ADP or SAP or many other different systems. They're all fantastic. They're all brilliant. They are systems of record where you record information about the employee. If you have to move from a systems of record to systems of intelligence, which actually provisions predictive and prescriptive analytics, that is where you need this transition.
Mm.
Otherwise, it will not happen.
Yeah.
So, every organization has workforce challenges, opportunities, right? And that goes untapped because of the understanding of what this piece is and how to kickstart that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not about just grabbing data. Sorry, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just see that we get quite conflicting heads up in the comments. For some people, the video went into buffering, back to the beginning. So sadly, this must be something either LinkedIn overall, related, or your individual connection or internet provided related. Because for us, it went seamlessly. And I just want to reassure everybody. Worst case scenario, the recording will be available either on our hackinghrlab.io platform, or at the original LinkedIn link, and you will just be able to see the recording a little bit after the live session concludes. So apologies for that. Technology is great until it isn't, and like I said, sometimes life and technology, they happen a little bit more intensely than anticipated. Now, Anush, as I was listening to you, I focused, quite accidentally back onto the title of this panel, and it's anticipating the future.
Hmm.
And I would really like to take a few moments and listen to your key learnings and your experience with what are the mindsets and the skill sets of HR leaders, but equally wider business leaders when anticipating the future. Because what I experience quite often when we make change plans, for example, or when we use predictive analytics, oftentimes this anticipating the future is
Hmm.
miscontracted of, crystal ball, clear, seeing the future happening and playing it back. So how how can leaders best develop their mindsets and skill sets to anticipate the future, to have, scenarios, but also unexpected. And probably this is the universe helping us with what technology, is going through today. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, on a lighter note, you can take a astrology course and become an astrologer. But yeah, uh, coming back to the serious point of it, it's not rocket science. Lee, one needs to first understand to predict future. Uh, you need loads and loads of data. Now you need to know what you need to do with the data. So let me
Mhm.
try and give you certain elements of what is predictive analytics and how should one go about it, because that is what predictive and prescriptive are about. Future. Now let's understand three basic concepts. Predictive analytics is not just a trend. A lot of people have this myth. It is the next evolution of employee experience journey management and evolution of workforce management. This, if used properly, can highlight your workforce challenges and also give you number of opportunities to mitigate those challenges before even they take place. Now, what it does, I'm just going back to the title of the session. Predictive people analytics. It helps you make better workforce decisions and helps you move the needle when it comes to HR matrix. Now, I'm sure a lot of us spend a lot of time looking at what our matrix are, what do we typically do with these matrix, and depending on the kind of vertical or the function that you are part of, there are numerous metrics you would have. Whether you're talking about employee engagement, whether you look at employee productivity, whether you look at time to hire, quality of hire, whether you're looking at compensation matrix, whether you're looking at talent matrix of bench strength creation or diversity matrix or uh, learning and talent matrix, you can move the needle up by many notches if you're able to use or understand predictive analytics and its capabilities better. Now, what exactly is this? We've been speaking a lot about this and what it entails. This term predictive analytics is, in a simple and layman's term, one type of advanced analytics which uses four things, and they are very important. Number one, historical data. So, as HR catalysts or HR partners, we need to have a very strong handle on what is our historical data we are capturing. If you're not capturing, start capturing every element of data. Do your employee experience lifecycle mapping and then look at what data point you are capturing, what data point you are not capturing, and how these data points need to speak to each other. That's the first element, historical data. Number two is statistical modeling. Now, it's a very important skill if you really need predictive analytics to work. It will not work without it. So, this modeling might include, in simple Excel term, you have a Excel tool called what if analysis, scenario building, which you were speaking about. You can do that kind of modeling in Excel, or in today's time, there are multiple free tools available in most of the HR platforms. Third and fourth, data mining and machine learning. Now, for that, you definitely need a system or you need a data scientist or somebody who does that piece. Now, that's machine learning. Yes, we need to understand how it works, but you really can't go and do coding. But for somebody to code, you need to tell the person what is the output I am anticipating, right? Once you combine these four elements, historical data, statistical modeling, data mining, and machine learning, what you get are predictable outcomes, trends, predictable events. Now, these prediction can help you make data led decision making.
Mm.
Let me give you an example. If you have the right performance data, now performance management is a very key element of every organization. Every company goes through whether you're using a balanced scorecard or using OKR or using MBOs, whatever format you're using, technology you're using, or framework you're using. We all collect performance data of employees. Some do on an annual basis, some do on a quarterly, some do on a monthly, weekly, depending on what the system in the organization is. If you have the right amount of performance data, you can actually use that to forecast future performance problems and develop targeted training for managers and employees and address their concerns. Now, that's one. Number two, simplest example. We all in even the most basic of HR, IS or systems, we capture leave and attendance, right? Now, if you are able to use leave and attendance data properly, you can figure out during you can figure out who are the employees who are at a risk of loss to the organization.
Mm.
If you marry that leave attendance data with person's performance data and talent data, you can easily predict what is the risk of loss and the risk of impact if a critical person leaves the organization. You can predict employee turnover. You can predict uh, your workforce manning dependent on that. You can predict employee learning and talent trends with that. You can figure out employee mobility. You can figure out career paths because of that,
Mm.
right? Now, someone has asked a question here, which is very important. What are some of the key tools that we can typically use to do a better analysis of data? Uh, Friend, you asked a very good question. Excel is a great tool, but it's limited when it comes to its performance and very complex calculations. Most of the organizations that I have worked or offered my consulting services use three or four of these. They use Tableau. Tableau is a tool which is used for intelligence. They use Looker. They use Power BI. These are three tools which are used for uh, one of the best tools I have used when it comes to do analysis of data. And coming back to the key question, it's not only about capturing data, it's about making sense of data. So you mentioned something called as what if. So you need to figure out what are those scenarios? Can you build those scenarios? Yes, Power BI is a very good system. So you can look at these, if you're looking to predict, see, you can't predict if you don't know what happened in the past and why it happened. So you need to consider both. That's why the historical data, that's why this is a journey of descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. You cannot jump from descriptive to predictive. I'm sorry, not going to happen. You
Mm.
have to go through these stages. Does your system provide you with data of what happened? Yes, 99.99 companies have those systems. Why it happened? That is where you have to use your own skill set and some systems correlations. Now you work on that data and marry different chunks of data together and you see what's going to happen. Now, when you know what's going to happen, you already have done certain things in the past. What has worked, what has not worked, which works great.
Yeah. Um, I do want to ask you something. It's been on my mind for quite some time listening to
Hmm.
you. And that
Hmm.
is we've been talking about people analytics and data and all the skills and capabilities and competencies around them. But I'm really curious, is there one skill that doesn't get enough recognition, and it's not necessarily a skill you would immediately associate with analytics, that you think is really the underdog in terms of skills? And I will give you a few seconds just to thank everybody for staying with us through technology ups and downs, and we're in the second half of our conversation. And back to you, Anuj, the underdog in terms of analytics skills. Anything comes to mind?
See, there are many, and but I'll focus on the most important, which often goes unnoticed. And this is where your journey of analytics starts. So let's understand analytics is not about data.
Mm.
That's a big myth people have. It's not just about looking at post-mortem data or why it happened and just marrying data to figure out some trends or coming out with some KPIs. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. You need to ask your question, why are you doing this? What is the outcome you are intending? What is your operating model blueprint? Why do you want to predict future? Let me ask you that. Why do you want to predict future? Because you want to prevent certain things. See, analytics is an output. It's not an outcome. Let's understand that. It's a process piece. It is not it acts as an input and certain times as a process. It's not the end outcome.
Mm.
Why am I doing this? What do I want as the end outcome? If you don't have that thought process, that mindset, that orientation, not going to work out.
Yeah.
And how it typically starts, irrespective of whatever you want to predict, your starting point is your employee journey management. Because unless you do that, you will never be able to figure out what data points you are missing and what data points you are not capturing. Once you capture those, make those journeys, and typically there would be not more than 25 to 30 odd journeys across the HR realm, and which includes talent acquisition, campus hiring, leave, attendance, employee services, learning, talent management, performance management, compensation, organization design, employee mobility, IJP, you name it. So look at, and don't think in terms of process, please. We kill it by thinking of process in the beginning. Journeys and process are very, very, very different. First, create your employee experience journeys across whatever verticals you have. See how those journeys talk to each other. For each of those journeys, what is the current process? How do you improve it to make it better? And then for each of those processes, what data you are capturing, what data you are not capturing. Whatever data you are capturing, is it used somewhere else as well? Does that data point have a linkage somewhere? Unless you think in an ecosystem mindset, analytics, believe you me, you will only end up doing post-mortem analytics with a pinch of diagnostic, and you'll be happy saying, oh yeah, I can see this data now and say this is going to happen because you're looking at historical trends. They will give you only 50% truth.
Mhm.
Yes, or it's like a coin toss. Will it happen? Will it not happen? With the World Cup going on, will Pakistan bat today or will Sri Lanka bat today? Tomorrow, who's going to win the toss? It's a 50-50 probability with two teams. And that is exactly what you end up doing if you don't have that ecosystem mindset. And believe me, I'm telling you this because I have failed at it number of times before I learned it, that
Mhm.
unless you have an ecosystem mindset, unless you look at why do you want to do it, define your why first. Why, what, and then come to the how. Analytics is the how piece. First your why, then your how, then the how piece, and then you look at the results. So to
Mhm.
me, having that strategic orientation and of what, why you want to do it, what is your HR blueprint, operating model blueprint, what do you want to do? Otherwise, you can't do it. There's so much betting that happens today. This person is going to create make a century, or this going to take 5 wickets in the cricket World Cup going on, right?
Yeah.
They also use data analytics,
Mhm.
pitch conditions. What is the temperature? What is the pitch condition? What's been the last 10, 12, 15 matches strike rate, or the average of the batsman or the bowler? They use those things. It's used in every field. So why can't we use it? The only way we can use it, what is your goal? So think outcome and not output, please. That's my only suggestion to everybody.
I see you're getting standing ovation in the comments on both the content and your cricket analogies. So please keep them coming. And you actually triggered my curiosity. I love how you highlight the importance of understanding why you do this before you get overly preoccupied with how you do it. So I'm wondering, and this is my inner journalist coming out to play, and it's professional curiosity. Do you have a few, maybe even Anush signature questions that you use in these conversations? Are there any questions that can help people really be intentional with how they go into this anticipating the future um, adventure?
You have hit the nail on its head. I was actually waiting for this question, anticipating this question, Minola, and I kind of used predictive analytics in anticipating that given our past 13, 14 interactions. So, okay. So here you go. See, let's understand two things. And it's not just understanding, it's acceptance of those. HR is in service of employees and in service of business, right? Most of our uh, commandments or things come from the top, from the CEO or the board, right? And you need to have multiple conversations with senior leaders who may be HR, may not be HR, and you have to answer why is this happening, what can we do? And at that point of time, we use the best of our knowledge or what we have gone through in this organization, what has worked, what has not worked, why things happen, why things don't happen. Now, way to transition that is very, very different. Number one, few things I always do is first, I have to always tell myself if I'm talking to the business person, he will not understand my language. Please understand, he or she will not understand the HR lingo. Some will not. So don't assume, because when you assume, you make an ass of you and me. That's how it's spelled, na? ASSU me. So as you and me, don't assume. Please don't assume that somebody understands your lingo. Ask yourself a question. If I was in that man's shoe or that woman's shoe, who's asking me a question, how should I answer? Now, business will ask you 100 questions. Your HR lead will ask you a million questions. You need to ask the first question, and very simple stuff. What is it that you are intending to achieve and why? Please explain to me. I'll bring in all systems and data. We'll do all the dirty work you need to do. Please answer two questions. Why should we do it? One, why are we doing it? What is the intended outcome? Can you please define that? And that definition cannot be a vision statement, or we will improve performance, or we will improve our employee engagement. I'm sorry to be very harsh and crude over here, but these are vision statements, these are dream statements. When you talk analytics, you're not talking dreams, you're not talking these things. You have to be very specific, right? So I'll give an example. Anuj will ride a bike. Great. Anuj will ride a bike. So what? Should he get a Nobel Prize for that? No. Is it a statement? Is it a goal? Is it a vision? What is it? You can't say it. Anuj will ride a bike at 10 kilometers per hour on a mountainous terrain by 2023. What have I added? To that one statement, I have added a condition, a criteria, and timeliness. Unless you have those tangible statements of why and what. What is the outcome? Outcomes have to be tangible. They cannot be in the air. Why do you want to do it? You will get subjective answers, which is great. The next step with those leaders is great. I understand why you're doing it. What is the intended outcome? Can you please define those 4 or 5? 3 or 4 are good enough. Work with them to define those. That will be your starting point. So they say, okay, we want to improve performance. So that's a very open statement. What do you mean by performance? We want to improve the performance benchmark of our organization by 10 basis points, 5 basis points, 3 basis points, which vertical by what time? Great. Now, everything will not be answered by analytics. Certain things you will need to go and change process. In certain things, you might need to change your HR operating model blueprint. And some, yes, you can do via data. So data is not always the answer. Please understand that. It will give you insights. What you do with those insights, that gives you your outcome. So I always start with why you're doing this. Why? Oh, our competition is doing it. Great. But their context is different. Ours is very different. Fine, we'll do it. What is the intended outcome? The key here is to make it tangible with condition criteria. Unless you do condition criteria, nothing will happen. And then break it down. Then have the following questions. Make it more of a organic conversation, not a rehearsed one. Please. A rehearsed one can easily be caught. And talk their language, the language they understand. I start with these 2 questions, and depending on the kind of answers they do, and believe me, 99.9% times the why is very clear. They will give subjective answers. You can't debate about it. That's your cue. Now go to the what outcome. They will struggle. Some will be very good. Some will be absolutely phenomenal, and some will be absolutely duds. You have to work with them. Make them understand, okay, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. What are you intending? Be specific. Employee engagement is a very broad term. Which area of employee engagement are you talking about? manager index, employee index? Are you talking about talent attraction? Are you talking about employee well-being, diversity? All these things contribute and make employee engagement. What are you talking about? What is the problem? The more data you gather, the more answers you make these people talk, you have to then figure out, okay, do I have the data for this or I don't have the data for this? You go with this. You go in this flow. And honestly, there is no script for this. I can only tell you the first two questions. Beyond that, it's your capability to have a Socrates, that conversation with people to ensure they give you what you want.
Yeah. Well, I know you warned us against dream statement, but probably it's my inner rebel coming out to play. So
Yes.
here's a dream statement. So Anuj is the facilitator of a panel on people analytics, predictive people analytics, and all his analytics heroes are speakers in this panel. And you're
Hmm.
thinking about, okay, what questions could I ask these leaders? So think about what question would you ask your analytics dream team, and then
Hmm.
consider that you ask yourself that question. And what I will give you a few seconds to think about it. I just want to address a few comments that we received. Yes, this conversation is recorded, and you will get to find the recording either on hackinghrlab.io, which is our platform, and you find all the recordings from all our past events, or just visit back the LinkedIn, the Hacking HR LinkedIn space, and you will get the recording where the live session is being hosted. So, Anuj.
Okay. So situation is this. I am a moderator or facilitator and I have my dream team of analytics over here.
Yeah.
My my first question to them, why analytics? Why do we need it? We're doing
Mm,
pretty good. Why do we need it?
yeah.
Let them answer whatever they answer. I will challenge those answers. I will challenge those answers. Because unless I get a clear why, I'm not moving ahead. I'm not moving ahead. Why? If I've got the why, okay, what is the outcome that we as HR fraternity or business fraternity can expect out of analytics? Show me some real time examples. Can you give me some real time life cases where analytics has impacted organizations, KPIs, or performance, or
Mm,
has actually made an organization move up the HR maturity curve versus an organization who did not do that and is still lagging behind? I'll
yeah.
ask those questions. And then I'll go about, okay, I am a novice, a layman. How should I start this journey? I don't know anything about it. I'm not a coder. I'm not a IT person. What should I do? How do I go about it? And most important, now I understand it's important, but how do I convince my senior management that we need to use analytics for decision making? How do I convince those? Can you give me some examples for that? Are
Mm,
there some ready reckoners I can use? Are there some industry best practices I can use? In fact, I hate the word best practice because nothing is a best practice, always in a context. Can I use a practice? Are there some things I can shamelessly cut, copy, paste from a similar organization in my industry? What are they doing better than what I am doing in terms of analytics? I'll go in that sequence with my dream team. So first is the why, second is the what, then is the how. And I keep on detailing the how till I know when I'm ready to hit the rubber with the road. When the rubber hits the road, I know I can now speed away. I'll keep refining most questions. So typically you would use a 5 why technique or how to go about it. How? In my context, I don't know this. What should I do? I have X limitation. I don't have a system. What should I do? So you need to look at all those possible combinations and then move ahead. I'll go that way.
Yeah. I am very mindful of the fact that we are entering the last minutes. We will try to wrap this up in a few minutes so that people who join us throughout the summit do have a couple of minutes of just, rest and look at something else than the screen and get some water. But um, something that I infinitely appreciate about you coming into our conversations is how open you are with saying, and I learned this from failing.
Yeah.
And I would really invite you to share what is your um, best takeaway, your most meaningful takeaway that you learned while navigating the world of analytics and sometimes, getting into failures.
I'll answer this question with a statement that was made by William Edward Deming. He said, learning is not compulsory, but neither is survival. And I am a firm believer in that. So I am what I am today, a sum total of my experiences. I might know two or three ways to do the thing right,
Mm.
but I will know 99 ways of not doing it that way because it will lead to failure.
Sounds like
And
predictive analytics on yourself.
so I have failed miserably in the beginning in stakeholder conversations. So even after understanding and believing it's going to work, it was difficult to convince the stakeholders because everybody comes from a very different walk of life and everybody has a very different lens of looking at things. And it's only after, I would say, umpteen conversations, I learned one magic trick, which I always use, is when I talk about analytics, I don't talk about HR analytics. I talk about how HR analytics is a output of business outcomes, or how HR analytics becomes an input to business outcomes. How, when we are able to improve the HR analytics piece, it will lead to improvement in business outcomes. So you have to walk the walk, talk the talk.
Mm.
So pretty simple, and it's not rocket science. If there is a critical role in the organization, and I know that guy is taking a lot of leaves, I have access to tons of data about that individual. I have his social profile map, this map, that map. I have number of job boards. Why can't I simply figure out how many leaves this person has taken on an average in the past couple of years? Is it a specific period he's taking a leave? What is the reason of the leave? Has he been really active on job boards? Has the person really been active on, certain specific websites? What are you trying to do over there? You are trying to figure out, is this person at a risk of loss? Now, if I know this person is, the organization is at risk of loss of losing this person, I will try and figure out what is the impact of loss.
Mm.
If the impact of loss is there, huge, I can tell the business, you know what, we need to do something about retaining this person. Otherwise, there's going to be huge loss. With the new incumbent coming in and becoming operational, and we going through the entire TA cycle of sourcing screening, it's going to take 3 to 5 months time. Are we ready to waste 5 months time, or should we look at retention strategy for this person? Now, all this can happen if you marry data properly, intersperse data, and I have done that, learned that after making many mistakes. So I talk business outcomes. I don't talk HR outcomes. That I will improve my HR KPI. No one's bothered about that. Sorry.
Mm.
Except your CHRO and few CEOs. Everybody wants EBITDA. Revenue market share, customer market share, free cash flow, competitive landscape, best in class service, and everything. Link your HR outcomes to that, link your analytics conversations to business outcomes, and you will get a go ahead. You will get all the support.
Anush, thank you so very much. Always such a pleasure to have you in our panel conversations, and it's been extra joy to have the privilege to share this space with you in a fireside chat format, and I see people really genuinely enjoyed it. So thank you so very much. I will ask you to leave us, with a Anush punchline. So very short, very value dense that people can take with them, and then we will wrap up this in about 1 minute.
Be inquisitive, ask questions. Why, what, how. Don't jump to the how. Figure out the why first, then the what, then the how. Go in that sequence.
Wow, now this is an mic drop moment. Thank you so very much. And thank you everybody for being here. I hope that I will get to welcome you back in our future conversation in about 4 minutes. Thank you, Barbara, for taking us through the technology and just taking care of our conversation moving as seamlessly as humanly possible in a technology environment. Anush, big gratitude. Thank you. And so looking forward to sharing conversation space with you again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
See
you,
you in
Minola.
about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, everyone who chimed in. Hope this was helpful for you. Let's stay connected. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Anush. Thank you so much. everyone, and good whatever moment of the day you are enjoying on your time zones as you are watching us live now or later, enjoying the recording. I do know that we are spread across time zones. Welcome back to everybody who was with us at our first chat from our second edition of People Analytics Global Summit. It is always a joy to welcome you. My name is Minola Jacques. I am your co-host for today. And please join me in welcoming Barbara. Barbara is our latest golden addition to our Hacking HR live events team. And she's backstage taking good care of us. So please do take a few seconds and just welcome her, or at the end of the conversation, thank her for her incredible work. We are now going into our second panel, and we will be talking about the automating future, leveraging AI to streamline people analytics processes. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, so Barbara, please do help me into bringing them on stage. What a wonderful panel. Now, this is a treat. Thank you so very much, everybody, for taking the time, for taking the energy to be here. I know that we are spread across time zones, so wholehearted gratitude for you being here. And I do want to take a few seconds, just like we did in our previous conversation, and acknowledge and appreciate the fact that on many time zones we still celebrate World Mental Health Day. For those of us who are already in tomorrow, please don't limit this to October 10, and do make every day World Mental Health Day for yourself and for those around you. So, without further ado, the automated future. I'm sure that that expression alone triggers many emotions and many thoughts in everybody that hears it. So let's make the most out of our time here today. You all know the drill by now. I will pass the mic around as you appear on my screen clockwise. That means Aura, you will lead us, and Tanal, you will bring us home. Very easy first round. A short introduction of your wonderful selves, and then when you hear the automated future, what comes to mind? Very short. It can be a word, it can be a sentence, just the opening punchline. Aura, welcome. Always a joy to see you.
Hello, Minola. Same here. It's awesome to be here with the amazing panelists that are here with us today. Ora Hewitt, I actually support LBA with anything people and culture related. I'm very excited to be here with all of you. Regarding what do I think about the automotive future, and like first word that comes to mind is definitely excitement and exploration. Um, that is what comes to mind. Thank you, Minola. I pass it to the rest. Thank you.
That's wonderful. When you said excitement and exploration, I was thinking, is Aura going for a lucky 3 row of X words? Andrea, so good to see you. Quite a blast from the past. It's been a minute.
It's been almost 364 days, I believe, Minola. So yeah, since we were last here. Amazing to see you again. Happy Mental Health Day, as you said, and great to be here with our panelists. So, very quick for me, I'm Andreas. I'm based in Athens, Greece at the moment, so it's quite late in the day. And I'm the Senior Director of People Ops and Analytics at a Series C startup that is based globally. We have hubs in Barcelona and New York. So I'm gonna say 2 words actually, and they're kind of on a spectrum. The first word is simplicity, right? I like to keep things simple. I work for a startup now. We need to keep everything simple. So when I hear automation, I think, how can it make my life simpler, right? And that is the first word. At the same time, the other word I have is concern. I'm always concerned about tools that I don't understand fully. And AI can be, and I'm sure or we will talk about as a panel, black boxes. So I'm always concerned about black boxes, about fairness, transparency, etc. So I think, yes, can you make my life simple? But I need to understand it more, so I allow you to do so.
Thank you so very much. Lisa, welcome. Good to see you again.
Yes, it's just been since last week. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Sanders. I am in the San Francisco Bay Area, currently in transition, but have for the last 25 years run organizations on the people, culture, talent, and operations, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of finance. So a little bit of everything, a little bit of a unicorn. But I'm super excited about this panel. It's a hot topic, right? And is it replacing us? Concern for HR teams is top of mind, right? And the two things that the two words that I'm going to use, I'm going to follow Andreas, is harmonious alliance. And it's possible. It is possible.
Wow, thank you so very much. Felicia, welcome. I love the poster in your background. And you're on mute. Still on mute. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo, but I'll turn this down. Okay. So great to be here. This is my first panel with Hacking HR. So very excited, very honored to be on this amazing panelist of great people. I think you guys are all just absolutely amazing. All of your backgrounds sound amazing. I think something that keeps my mind going when we talk about the subject is really about productivity and transformation. I think that's really where organizations as a whole are going when it comes to this topic. Just a little bit about my background. I'm the founder of CPO Playbook. We're an HR and leadership consultancy. And I've worked with startups. I've worked with very large global organizations and everything in between. So it's very exciting to see how every organization approaches this subject. But very happy to be here. And thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. And you couldn't have picked a better panel, to make your debut in the Hacking HR world. And Tanal, good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Minola. Excellent panel as always. I'm Tanal, and I'm an HR leader with over 12 years of experience in the people function. I'm based in the Bay Area, and I'm currently supporting a company that is developing the future of talent, specifically in the AI space. So really excited to be in this panel and, discussing this topic. I'm currently an advisor, partner to business leaders, and I provide advice and guidance on all HR matters, including employee relations, performance, compensation. And so the word that comes to mind when I hear automation is joy. I just get excited, in glee. But then on the flip side of that is also the bias, and we know that that's real.
Thank you all so very much for being here. And a small confession from my part, this panel does feel very, very extra special because I have the honor of having two of my fellow Hacking HR moderators as speakers. So it's always so good to have you here and just share this space in so many roles than we are used to. Now, I was thinking about automated future can mean so many things within so many contexts through different lenses within a business. I would really invite you to think back to some of the conversations that you are a part of within the HR, but also outside of HR, and share with us what are the key questions and how much do the questions and, the anticipation points from the business and HR, how much do they overlap? And where, if anywhere, you see quite a significant misalignment. or separation? And I will just give you a few seconds to think about that. I do see quite a few people who just joined us over the last minute. So I will just remind everybody that you will get the recording available either through hackinghrlab.io or on our Hacking HR LinkedIn space. And please, 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 I do encourage you to use the chat as if it were your own conversation space. So do answer the questions you hear in the panel, raise questions of your own, do drop us comments and your ideas and your thoughts, and we will definitely keep an eye on your conversation on the side and bring in highlights into our panel. So Lisa, you probably saw this coming to you. You know that for some strange reason, I always go diagonally on the first question after the introductions. So please be our pioneer today.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you to repeat because I'm thinking I might not understand the question. Can you repeat it? Like, I just want to be sure I'm answering the right thing and not going off on some weird tangent. So
sure. Think about the conversations that you know you're either part of or you hear around you regarding automated future, what that looks like, you know, how it's useful, and whether the questions that you hear from the business and HR, are they aligned or are they going in separate directions?
Got it. Thank you. I wanted to just be sure that I wasn't talking about something completely different.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's lots of conversation happening, right, about AI and HR and how we can use it, right? You know, I'm going to start by saying that it's got a long way to go, right? We know that. It's not where it needs to be for us to really rely on it. I mean, let's talk about how it barely can upload a resume correctly, right? Like it doesn't read code correctly. Like it just, there's things, right? With, you know, at the company level, especially at the leadership, on the leadership side, there is a lean in to start using it, right? For a number of reasons. One, you know, the technical side, they kind of rely on technical tools, but also to free up time for HR teams to focus on other things, right? Not looking at 1,500 resumes that came in on your LinkedIn job post, right? Mm-hmm. So, and while, you know, we understand that there is that issue of whether or not it's actually helping us or possibly hindering us, and we're not finding, you know, we're losing potential talent that, you know, we could have potentially reached out to if we had, you know, eyes on it, right? But there is a struggle there. You know, they want it to be adopted quickly because sometimes they can see that maybe they could reduce costs by having less people if they automate, and that, you know, less eyes required for stuff around talent and all of that. So I think there is a struggle. It's probably going to continue until we feel like those tools are actually reliable, right? And you know, again, to talk about the bias part, you know, AI is only as good as the data that goes into it, right? And how many times have we seen that AI has been caught creating its own biases based on the data that it's getting, right? So there's a ways to go, but I do see that there's a struggle between the business side, right, wanting to adopt it for multiple reasons, right? Could be financial, right? But, you know, especially now given the macroeconomic climate, but also to streamline and be efficient. But we're not there yet. It's going to be a little bit of a fight. So
thank you.
Gloves on.
Well, everybody, you know that the official and, you know, the unmuting competition is officially open. So please jump in and build your conversation. Let's see who trained their fingers. Andreas.
I can go. I'm trained. My hand's always on the mouse. No, I'm just gonna amplify Lisa's message by drawing parallels to AI and analytics, since this is what we're talking about, right? And I think we've all been as a panel in the analytics world for a while. I've been in it since HR analytics wasn't a thing, right? So I see a lot of parallels here that are very, very similar, right? HR analytics grew very quickly in the last 10 years, and in the beginning it was seen as a panacea, right? So once businesses started building their analytics teams, like, oh wow, we're going to bring a couple of analytics gurus, a couple of data scientists, that's it, our problems, our people problems are over, right? We've solved HR. And of course that is not how it happened, right? So now that the field is maturing, we understand what works in the field, what doesn't work. We also understand that jumping and running and sprinting before you walk is not advisable, right? So there are very important things. I'm not a major believer in things like curves, analytics curves. I don't believe in those, but still, I think jumping straight into hiring a pair of data scientists before you have a proper HRIS and a good, DW behind it, right? We all know that leads to failure, right? I see the same thing in AI that Lisa's mentioned, right? So at the moment, right, if you can't do basic things yet, well, right, let's not ask too much of it. And this is where I see misalignment between business and HR. I do feel we're getting in that stage where, again, leaders think AI, it's going to panacea, it's going to solve it. You're not going to need any people operation teams because everything's going to be done completely automatically for you. Recruiters, nobody needs recruiters, right? We're just going to source talent automatically and bring it into the business. So I think, Lisa's an amazing point. I think this is where we need to work on to bridge that gap, right? And I always, try to side on, especially with this, on the side of cautiousness, right? And understand that, there are certain things that it's not there yet. Yeah, that would be my contribution to this question.
Thank you. Who would like to contribute? Tanal.
So I'm not sure if my mic is working now. Can you hear me?
It's
Awesome.
perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump in there and add, I want to say maybe a counter view. I feel like, automation and AI has been around for some time, and we've seen examples of this going with, things like Unilever pioneered these years ago, where they looked at AI in their SAP, in their HRM function, and streamlined the processes, the data. They were able to bring their people strategy across a globe. Now that's just the first generation AI, and it's worked so far. Where I'm seeing this going now with all this, next level is, it's going to increase the impact. It's going to help us slice and dice data in a lot faster way than we normally would. Last year, I had to go through 6 months of compensation, and endless spreadsheets and talking to business leaders. And I'm thinking, what if I had, ChatGPT or something like this to help me look at not just the automation part, but also, if I change the prompt, it will give me a totally different answer. And so the short answer to your question is that I see a lot of leaders, excited, but also trepidatious towards ChatGPT. There's some things that are working, and some things that, naturally, because it's still on the cusp of everything, we still have a lot to learn, and how we use this in a mindful way. Making sure that it helps us automate, but we still need to put the human touch. We need to apply our own judgment to get to where we need to go.
Aura.
I do think that this is a complex question, by the way, Minola, and I love that you asked the question. I also love everything that the panelists have said here. From my perspective, I actually see the great opportunities within the business side to actually simplify processes and automate, and for employees to actually focus more on other uh, tasks that are more, I will say, in the side of what either they love to do or they would like to do. And I think it's an opportunity that before, it was there, but now it's more real because some of these tasks can be easily automated. At the same time, that my feedback is about obviously excitement and explanation. The first answer I gave in the panel is about being cautious because day in and day out there are new AI tools that came out, and going back to the part of where the models right come through and also the tasks that are assigned within LI, is important that each team do their due diligence on not only exploring and experimenting with these tools, but also checking to see and assessing how are they working. And this is not such an easy task to do because there are many tools up there. Um, and what I always say is for teams to actually see what works for them at a given moment. You don't have to jump to try to solve all the issues or the situations you want to enhance within a business. It's about, okay, what is happening now and is a solution that can potentially help us, and truly go through the assessing and actually um, critically checking that tool, because if the tool is not what you need, it may do more harm than good. So going back to what Lisa was saying, yes, they can screen, but there are bugs within the tool. Yeah, maybe at this time that tool for that specific job is not ready. In the future, may be ready, but there may be other things that Lisa's team or other teams within the company can use certain tools that are available now and can help them downstream and simplify processes within the organization. And being cautious, I think that there is still lots to come regarding regulation of AI, and there is still lots of things that we're going to be learning day in and day out. So very excited about it. Thank you. Great question.
Thank you. Well, Felicia, is you're doing a very brave thing. Is not easy to go last on hacking HR round of answers. Please.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of those answers are definitely hard to come by. So you asked about conversations, and something that came to mind is that I'm also a podcast host, and I was interviewing Brian Ray, who's at Eviden. He's a senior executive at Eviden, and he talks about how do you build a skills taxonomy within the business. And the skills taxonomy fairly is there's a lot of thought around what would we be able to do if we brought AI in and created a skills taxonomy. But when we really get into the nitty-gritty and the details of things, a lot of companies, I think, are thinking about and talking about shopping around and implementing. And I just think we're not there yet. I think it's good to look at all of these tools, and I think it's good to consider them and understand and learn. But if you peel back the layers of that conversation, you need to think about, okay, why do we want to build a skills taxonomy? What does that entail? How do we validate whether or not somebody has a skill or doesn't have a skill? How do we understand if somebody is a master at a skill, is just learning a skill? How do we understand what skills we need in the future? And by the time you ask an organization to verify their skills and the data that they currently have, it's months later where they're now changing them. So how do you solve the problem? And I think that the first thing that really we need to start thinking about is like something like, this is just an idea, but something like a task force, like an AI task force. And these people would come together, they would have different perspectives and be able to represent different parts of the organization and come together and be able to discuss and talk about on a recurring basis how they're validating and making the data reliable. So it's not predicting something that we needed 6 months ago, but rather here's where we're at and here's what we need. And here's how we're going to leverage AI in order to take the journey with us. So I think that it's great and so exciting to have these conversations about the tool. And I think even the tool or AI itself will radically change in 3 months and so forth and so forth. So that task force really could be dedicated to what's moving on a daily basis, not just in the organization, but outside the organization, be able to marry the strategy of the business to really what the organization needs to do, and within the system of the AI, in industry, if you want to call it, but the boom, or maybe is a better word. So I think we're exploring words as we're going along, right?
Yeah. Lisa, I saw you unmuting yourself. Would you
Yeah.
like to add something?
Yeah, I just think that a good place to kind of end this is we have to remember that while automation and AI do share some similarities, they are fundamentally different in their capabilities, right? It's, automation is focused on tasks, right? Whereas AI seeks to create machines, right, that can perform tasks like a human, right? So they're very, very different. And I think we need to differentiate them. They're not the same, right? They are very different. What you get from them is completely different, right? And it's, I just think it's important to remember that they're different. They're not the same.
Love that point. And I really want to circle back to the title of the conversation, which is leveraging AI to streamline people analytics processes. And whenever I see something along the similar principle, leveraging something to streamline processes, whatever processes those might be, in my day-to-day work, I use a quote from the late Bishop Desmond Tutu that says that there comes a time when we need to stop pulling people out of the water, and we need to go upstream and see why they are falling in the first place. So I just want to take a few minutes of really mindful and intentional conversation around how can we contract the correct expectations for what, AI or any kind of solution can do to streamline processes. Is there, and if yes, what kind of body of work needs to be done, irrespective of what AI solution we are using, to make those people analytics processes, I'm not sure there is a word, but I'm not a native speaker, so I hope I can get away with it, streamlinable. So let's not put all our hopes and expectations into a solution, but also what upstream work needs to be done. And Andreas, I would invite you to lead us into this part of the conversation.
A good quote, by the way. It reminds me of, don't give a man a fish, teach him to fish, right? It's a very similar, very, very similar philosophy. Let me see if I'm following you. So how do we educate? So is this follow-up? How do we educate our stakeholders or whoever it is in order to understand what AI can do for analytics, right? That's sort of your question. All right, I'll jump in, but I'm sure my panelists will improve. I think I'm just going to follow. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to follow on from Lisa's point previously, which is the first thing to do to enable understanding of AI is understanding AI itself, right? And Lisa's already alluded to that, right? But of course, when we talk about AI, it's not a single entity, right? We're not talking about the Terminator, right? We have artificial narrow intelligence, then we have artificial general intelligence, right? Then we have reactive machines, limited memory, theory of mind, all those types, right? Which have been around since the 1950s. So it's not a new thing, right? It has become a new thing because nowadays things are amplified very quickly, right? And the rate of progress is very quick. So I think we always need to be sure that everybody who makes decisions in order to streamline processes understand what type of AI we're talking about, right? So I'm assuming, as part of this conversation, we are more or less addressing, your standard LLMs, right? Your ChatGPT and the like, right? So those for me, first understand its potential and understand what it can do versus some of the other types of AI which might not be relevant, right? Secondly, I think for me is, and again, that kind of goes back to your saying, right? Go back to the source of the problem, is understand the problem itself, right? And that takes me back to a general HR problem where this kind of disconnect between the various parts of HR and the problems that exist in HR, right? I think somebody in the chat kind of asked the question already, which is very interesting. Is the scope of AI data purely for recruitment, right? Of course it isn't, right? But of course we also have to remember that recruitment itself, wrong recruitment, is something that drives potential problems down the line within HR, right? So performance, right, attrition, etc., etc. So it takes me back to making sure that all of our stakeholders understand the systemic nature of HR. I think it was, this word is bandied around a lot lately, right? Systemic HR. I think George Persan is talking about it. Other people talking about systemic HR and the nature of the problems. I think, so what I would start the conversation with is educate on the nature of HR, understand the problem clearly and how it is solvable with analytics and the systemic nature of it, and then see if that particular type of HR that you're discussing can add any sort of streamlines within the different points of the system.
Thank you. What a lead to follow. Let's see. You are very polite speaker, so I think I will start to call you out. So Tanal, would you like to add?
Thank you, Andreas. That's actually prompted a lot of thought on my end in terms of the evolution of AI itself. And we've seen like that automation has been there for some time. But where it's becoming is that we're using that automation to build on the knowledge and create a bigger database. So when you think about how, for instance, chatbots started, they improve the employee experience, they improve the candidate experience, but while they are actually doing that, it's capturing the data and it's building on that data to give you more, I would say, information to make an informed decision, not just from hiring, but also predictive analytics in the sense that, okay, this person is going to be successful in this role versus that role. And to compound on that, you can use that data to maybe do stretch exercises. You can use that data to understand, how does it compare to market data, at a broader level. So the evolution of AI, as we see it, is that the automation piece is there, and now the next part of this is how do we use it to remove the administrative burden, and then remove or address the biases and the data privacy. Because one of the things that I'm seeing is resistance. There's a lot of people that are still resisting this because, one, it's new and dangerous. People are feeling like this automation is going to replace their jobs. There was a research done by Pew that said that about 250 people will not actually apply for a job if AI is involved, right? So all of these things play into how we are, addressing the issue. But also to go back into the question itself, it can only give you as good as what you put into it. Like any data, if you're using a sample that is inaccurate or it's too small of a sample size, you're going to get what you put into it. So we need to make sure that, one, if we are using this for organizational purposes, that it can be done for the reasons that, we're solving. And two, that we're looking at the root cause into how to build on that particular information. Again, it goes to the idea of you can use it as a source, but at the end of the day, you have to apply human knowledge. You have to apply human judgment to make the informed decision. We're not at the stage where we can fully rely on it because it's only half the cup at this point. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tanal. Well, let's see. Let's go, Felicia, and then we take it from there. Let's see.
Thank you, Minola. So I think as we're talking through it, we've talked about kind of how do we educate leaders. And I think also just educating the employee population, prompt engineering, what is that? What does that look like? I think there needs to be different types of education at different levels of the organization. And that, I think, is a really great step, because you're providing awareness of what it is and what it's not, and how to use it even before it gets implemented. I think that that's really important, helping people understand what type of questions they need to be asking both themselves and how to actually work with the tool. I think it also provides some level of comfortability with the tool and saying, okay, I know a lot about it, and now I'm a little bit more familiar with it. And so I feel better about how this might help me be more productive, or how this might help my leaders make better choices, right? Because at the end of the day, the data is one data point, that an AI bot or so forth may provide, but it's really not a decision making, tool. It provides helpful additional data for decisions to be made, but nobody should be making decisions based on the output of AI, period. And why I say that is because there is so much that humans experience, more so than the tool can actually collect data from, that there needs to be several perspectives and several ways of being able to collect data, provide perspective, provide a heated argument to make the best decision. We talk about DE&I, and we talk about that because great decision making comes from multiple perspectives, and that is research based. And so again, I think it's really just about helping different parts of the organization, different functions and different levels, educating them on what it is, what it's not, what are some scenarios that you can use it for, prompt engineering. How do you put great data in to collect great, strong data that can assist in decision making? I would kind of go there.
Thank you. And let's do Aura and then Lisa, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So, great feedback from everybody. I do think this is a good question. I think Andreas, you went first. That was awesome. How you answered that question so promptly. One of the things I think that is important to remind ourselves is that in order to leverage anything within the business or the strategy or anything that we're trying to do, we need to understand first what is what we're trying to resolve, right? What is the problem that the organization has or the team has? And then from there, we can then critically analyze what are the steps that we can take there. LI is not different in that regard. We need to understand, what this situation or tool or whatever is gonna do and what problem is solving. um, we cannot just, like I would say, like implement to implement. And there are multiple parts that go in terms of project manager to assess that before an implementation happen. I do think that at this time we are on infancy stages, and then organizations truly should be asking themselves, okay, what can we solve if we have this? What are things that I would like to have as an organization? And I'm going to bring a great example. Job descriptions is something that we in HR and also teams invest lots of time putting it together. I'm not saying AI is going to do your job description for you. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in this case, this is a situation that we can downstream some time on that. So we can have, with proper prompt, have AI provide a generic job description as a first drive, and then we can have it, and then we as humans, we still have to do our job, right? Go critical review that, edit, do other things that we need to. But sometimes savings can be done on that. That's just an example. Other thing that I actually think that is important is regarding the source that we have within the business of data. Businesses have lots of data, and it's important to go through those and assess how accurate is that data to begin with. And I know this is going to take some time, but that is important, because if the goal is then to use that or open source, which most of us are big fans of open source, right? That is what AI and other technologies are currently using today. So regarding the internal data, it's important to assess it, see what it is, and we as people critically make the decisions and see, okay, is this bias? Is this not bias? Because at the end of the day, the model and the tasks within the jobs that are within the code is only as good as the information that goes on it. And there are some of that we will have control internally, but there are some of that is just in open source. So it's looking at different database and other things. But my feedback is always go back and see what is the project, the problem you're trying to solve, and see if this requires AI or if it's actually something else, because AI may not be the answer to that specific problem or downstream situation you're trying to solve. Thank you.
Lisa.
Yeah, I think that everyone touched on all the points that I would make. The only thing that I would add is that, and this is building on what Aura said, is that each organization is going to have different needs, right? And it's really important to do an audit and make sure that you're finding solutions for the problems, the issues, potentially, data that's missing, right? Or, I wish I had more of this. Okay, great. And then to do your research, right? And it's AI is an unstoppable force. We all know that, right? The key lies not in avoiding it, but embracing it, and wisely, with thoughtful governance, right? It's that's the key. And getting key stakeholders bought in is, again, data. You've got to come to them with data, like, of why. And not just, oh, look at what it spit out, right? You should never, like Felicia said, you should never make a decision based on purely on what AI spits out at you. There's a convergence of what they give you and what we know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's safe to say that we didn't need predictive analytics to know that this hour would pass by so quickly. We are just a little bit over 10 minutes from saying a very painful goodbye. But here's my, possibly, I'm not promising anything, final question. In addition to AI, other key ingredients of the unicorn dust, for organizations are, we hear a lot of, how about curiosity? How about creativity? How about disruption, innovation, positive deviance, and all that? So, Aura, I've been following your work, and I know that these are very near and dear to your heart. So, how do we bring curiosity, experimentation, innovation in this conversation around AI and streamlining people analytics?
I do think they go hand in hand with each other. And I do think a way of bringing it is definitely having a way that organizations can do this is setting up members from each area of the organization to be part of AI committee. This is a must, especially because we're doing this work, right? And provide not only, like I will say, town halls where this we can speak about AI and also other type of innovations, other things that we are doing within the business, right? If it's, I don't know, new standards for, like, for example, here I work in architecture firm, here we have new standards, sometimes things change, and is creating that collaborative learning with everybody. And collaborative learning help people not only to get excited about new things, but also helps with empathy and with resilience. Because to the point that we were making here, with any integration that we will do or implementation, in this case, we're talking about AI. There are things that's going to go very good. There are times that things don't go so good. And in that regard, organizations and leaders need to be transparent and say things as they are. Listen, we not here today, but we think that we're going to take the right steps and we're going to move over there or be in a better place, right? And to do that, I think collaborative learning provides an opportunity for people to experiment. And I have talked a lot about experimentation here. I'm a firm believer of people experimenting and trying things. And we're going to be making mistakes together, right? But let's learning. Also, it works as a caution sign, right? You all have been in those trainings, right? Like, don't click on the link, right? We receive those all, every year. We still do for cybersecurity and everything. And this is things where people can share. Listen, I received this email and it really looked like so and so. So others can hear it and say, oh, okay, next time that this happened, I go back to my toolbox and then I remember that Joe Smith mentioned that email, right? So I think collaborated learning plays a huge role, experimentation, sharing experiences with one another, and definitely knowing that we are on this together. And this is the way that work is now, you know. As Lisa say, AI, nobody will stop it. It's just embracing it and making it part of our work, and also being cautious, which many of you, Tanal, Felicia, Andreas, and Lisa also mentioned that, the being cautious about it.
Thank you, Aura. Well, let's Felicia.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked, we've all said that we need to ensure that the data is reliable, ensure that there's integrity there. But I think that kind of what Aura started with was this excitement about it. And I want to make sure that that excitement is sustained, because it is very powerful and very exciting to think about what we could possibly do. And, you know, when it comes to creativity, I think that when we look at the types of people that will be able to draw the most like richest answers or responses, you know, from an AI tool, it's going to be those who are really thinking outside the box and really trying to understand and, you know, have a different perspective. And so I feel like creativity and innovation comes again from diversity. And that is going to be, I think, a little bit of a highlight when it comes to how do we leverage, you know, AI. And so I think it's important to think about not just how we use the tool, but also who uses the tool. You know, if we have somebody in the US using the tool and 90% of the organization is in the US, like, let's get those 10% of people to represent who are outside of the US to think about what else we would put into it or what data they would need. And I would encourage that when thinking about trying to get the best out of an AI tool and that those creative responses, is to really make sure that the entire organization or population or whatever you're working with is included. You know, don't leave anybody out. There was an organization I worked with, and most of the employees were in Asia and the US, and we had maybe a couple employees in Japan. But at the end of the day, we had at least one employee in Japan. You know, I think that that's something to think about. And, you know, what works for everyone in the US doesn't work for everyone in Asia and so forth. So really just make sure that you have a good representation of where people are from and multiple backgrounds, and making sure that you're really making an inclusive environment that are going to explore the tool, whatever, you know, AI tool you're plan to use in the future, and make sure that all of those perspectives are being represented. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Tanal.
Yeah, so really a lot of thoughts on this. I'm going back to what Felicia had said earlier about taxonomy. And if anybody has, you know, played with GPT, which I'm sure most of you have, even my 10-year-old has, you'll find that the power of the question changes the answer. So this is where curiosity becomes really, really important for us to explore, because we're still at the frontier of this. There's so much opportunity, and we don't want to just look at it from we're solving a problem. We also want to look at it from like, this is a powerful tool. How can we use it to get to the next level and 10x our productivity, our automation? So if we're thinking about taxonomy and how hard that is, one example that comes to mind is you get a sample data of, let's say, people in your organization that are doing really well. So understanding what skill sets and sub-skills they have can feed into that information. And then if you put that into a larger pool, you start seeing patterns, and the AI will start building on that pattern. We also know, to her point earlier too, that right now the data is a little flawed. If you put certain roles into ChatGPT, it will default to a certain gender. Text, it was tested by Textio that a lot of it is still very biased, and we know that some roles are still not in that data pool. So it's only working for large sets of data right now, mostly in very, I would say, tech prone industries, tech roles. So the more we add to it, the more we expand on it, the more we'll be able to make use of it. On the flip side of that, my company, which is really a big advocate for AI, will block us from ChatGPT, but it'll tell us to experiment with ChatGPT because there's still hesitation. There's still that fear of, data privacy. There's that fear of the unknown. And so it's a yin yang of how we approach this. Like with any technology, when the internet took off 20 years ago, when the industrial revolution, we have to approach it with caution and make sure that we're making use of it and being ethical and mindful of how we approach it.
Thank you, Tana. Lisa, I saw you unmuted, please.
Yeah, I'll just really quickly. I think what you were asking is how do we potentially leverage AI in specific areas, right? And that is going to be a collaborative thing, right? That you're talking to the teams, and I'll use just as an example, learning and growth, right? If that's something that you want to increase, you want to collect data on that, you want to make it better, right? So that employees are reaching their potential. AI will help you identify patterns in employee performance, right? Helping you tailor development plans, but then it requires the human to then use them to inspire and motivate individuals to their potential, right? And continuously be monitoring it, right? But those are the types of things, but it's going to be a collaborative thing, right? That and a lot of experimenting.
Thank you. Well, Andreas.
You seem to be picking on me today. You leave me for last, and then you gave me the hardest question to answer first. I'll remember that for next time, Minola. No, I mean, again, I have very little to add to our amazing panelists, and thank you again for sharing the screen. I'm going to go back to my very first thing that I said, simplicity, right? Because you asked how do we ensure curiosity around this. Now, what I would say is, AI is a technology, right? It is just another technology, right? I would approach it from the point of view, again, I'm in ops analytics first and foremost. So, always a project plan, right? Always, I would approach it from the perspective that simple wins, right? Prove its worth, right? Prove its worth with simple wins, simplicity. But the great thing about AI, unlike previous technologies, is where 10 years ago, right, where you got new technologies, and I would tell my team, team, I'm thinking about building a very quick chatbot to test whether it works or not for our employees to go into their LMS, right? That would take 3 to 6 months, right? Or more. Now, the advantage of AI and the type of AI we're talking about is that this is an A/B experiment that can be done in days, right? We're counting in days and not months or years anymore. So what I would encourage is experimentation, right? Simplicity, solve the simple problems, right? That become your calling card to then draw more into helping you and really buying into these tools. We are a language. We're a language teaching business. We have our platform that connects tutors and students, right? So we didn't sit on instead of sitting on the sideway over AI and looking at it pass us by. We built a teaching assistant to integrate into the platform. I believe in a matter of 4 to 5 weeks, right? Just to test it out, right? How does it work? So this is the beauty of this, right? You don't need to solve world hunger or all of HR problems in one go, right? You can start small, experiment. It's fluid. It's good, right? It's good enough right? You don't need massive technical experience anymore. Of course, you still have to earn sort of caution, which we said again and again and again, right? But again, these are experiments, right? So I would encourage everybody to experiment with it, solve those small problems that haggle you day in and day out in HR, and see where it takes you.
Thank you all so very much. Now, Andreas, what I love most about your promise to get me for your speaker experience today, I love that that comes with a promise that you will come back on future panels. So thank you for that. Now, we are
Back as long
literally
as you have me.
we are literally 2 minutes away from wrapping this one up. And the final ask of all of you wonderful people is, do leave our audience with a very short punchline takeaway from this panel. Now, in the interest of time, what I will do, I will ask you to speak. I will pass the e-mic around counterclockwise. That means Tana, you will go first. Aura, you will wrap it up. So I will give you a few seconds to think about it, while I will thank everybody for taking the time and the curiosity to be here. I do hope that I will get to welcome most of you in a few minutes for our last conversation within the first day of our summit today. So, Tana, your key takeaway, your punchline.
Yeah, so the three things that I'm taking away with me is experimentation, fall in love with the problem, and really look at the language to identify or mitigate any biases or algorithms, whichever way you want to look at it.
Thank you so much. Felicia.
I agree with Tana. Fall in love with the problem. But with mine, I'm going to say, think about putting together an AI task force. Who does that include? What are they going to do? How often are they going to meet? What are they going to review? What data are they going to audit? How are they going to do it? All of those things I think really comes first before you take any chances on implementing anything that, might spit out really dirty data. So, think about that task force. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Lisa, you're next in the punchline wrap up.
Absolutely. I'm going to say that it's, how AI and humanity can join forces to create that dynamic HR ecosystem that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Andreas.
Ooh, that was amazing. It's very tough to follow that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same as everyone. I think experiment, start small, and use AI for good.
Thank you. Aura, bring us home on this one.
Embrace it. It's here to stay. This is the greatest disruptions that most of us have seen in our work life. And with that comes learn from each other. Collaborated learning definitely will help you assess prompts and other things that you need. So we'll get you quicker there to learn tools.
Thank
Go
you.
and get them.
Aura, Andreas, Lisa, Felicia, and Tanal. What a joy this has been. Thank you so very much. I hope I will get to see you very, very soon in future conversations. Everybody, if you're joining us in a couple of minutes, please make sure that, you do take a few seconds to stretch, to go get some water. And I will welcome you in a couple of minutes. And do take full advantage of the wonderful music in between for a little bit of dance chair. It's our tradition by now. Thank you, everybody, so much. See you soon.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second edition of the People Analytics Global Summit here at Hacking HR. Welcome to everybody joining us now. Also, welcome back to everybody who rejoined from the previous conversations. It's always a joy and a privilege to co-host these wonderful, wonderful panels. My name is Minola Jacques. I am your co-host for today. We do have Barbara with us backstage. Barbara is our newest addition and tech whisperer. So please do join me in welcoming her warmly like we do here at Hacking HR. Now, this is our third conversation for our first day of our global summit, and we will talk about innovate or stagnate, using data to drive organizational innovation. And I will ask Barbara to help me bring the speakers on stage. And while we do that, I will just very, very warmly encourage everybody, do drop us a short note in the comments. First and foremost, let us know where you're watching us from. And also, please feel free to use the chat as your conversation space. Consider the questions asked in the panel just as much yours as they are our speakers. Drop your thoughts, your ideas, your opinions. I am sure I am not the only one keeping a lens on your side conversation, and we will bring the highlights. Now, this will be a very short hour, so let's make the most out of it. I will just remind everybody we are here to talk about innovate or stagnate, otherwise no pressure. And we will start off easy. What I will do, I will pass the e-mic around as you appear on my screen. That's very easy. I will ask, just, shortly introduce yourselves. And also, what about this topic is so personally meaningful to you that you actually took time to be with us today? So, Joe, welcome.
Hi, it's great to be here. I'm Joe Pope. I am the Director of HR Operations at Nixon Peabody, which is a national law firm. And in my role, among other things, I oversee our HR technology and analytics. This topic is so important to me because right now, my team is actually in the midst of a big analytics project with Power BI. And so we are starting to work on these types of questions and issues. And what I think a lot about is HR really wants to be strategic, right? And there's sometimes fits and starts with that. And I really think that data is where it's at. If you get your data program right, you could really be impactful in the organization. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about it.
Thank you, Joe. Trent, haven't seen you in a while in these panels with me.
Yeah, I've been in the penalty box. I've been trying to actually do some other stuff. So, hi, Trent Cotton. I'm the Vice President of Talent and Culture for Hatchworks Technology. I get to handle all the fun stuff in HR. So from the first hello until hopefully we are celebrating their retirement and everything in between. I am a data guy. One of my favorite quotes is William Denning, "In God we trust, and everyone else must bring data." And this is especially true whenever you're talking about innovation, because ideas sound great, but if the data doesn't really support it, then you're just wasting your time.
Thank you. Jen, so good to see you. And same as with Trent, it's been a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a penalty box. I feel like I've just kind of been heads down. So Jen Paxton. So I just recently sold one of my company that I co-founded that did video content. And so I'm kind of a free agent right now and doing some recruiting consulting, but data is in a lot of the decisions I make, from thinking about how we're going to spend our budget to, what sources we're going to look at, to even just how I'm going to spend my days. So I feel like it's just flowing through me in my being at this point. So very excited about this topic.
Thank you. And David, so good to have you with us today.
Hi. Yeah. So I'm David or David. I love how you pronounce it. I lead people and organization analytics for Confer in North America, and yeah, my role is really about thinking about innovative ways to look at data for innovation. Right. Really supporting our clients.
How wonderful to have all of you here. And I do see that a few people joined us. So just a very warm welcome to everybody. And before we have the questions popping up, I do want to comfort everybody with saying that this conversation is being recorded, and you will see the recording of this one as well as all the other conversations within the Summit series, either on hackinghrlab.io or on our LinkedIn space just a little bit. I see that we temporarily lost Trent, but let's go agile, not fragile. We will see how this goes. Now, just buying a little bit of time. Welcome back, Trent. I will just take a few seconds and do what we did at the previous conversations. I'm very mindful of the fact that some of us are still on time zones where it is October 10. Some of us already moved into the future and it's October 11. But I just want to take a few seconds and acknowledge and appreciate the fact that October 10 is World Mental Health Day. And just a kind reminder, don't make it a day just on October 10. Make it every day. So I know that there's a lot of, the entire spectrum of emotions when it comes to innovation or stagnation and anticipating the future. So let's dive right in. And Trent, I know that disruption is very near and dear to your heart. So I will ask you to be our pioneer today. And can you just lead this round of answers around how can data disrupt ways of working?
It shifts your paradigm. So I'll actually use an example. We're working on an internal project and have a little project team, and the problem statement that we gave them is, how do we increase employee engagement? And so they went off and they met, and then they pulled me back in as the executive sponsor, and they said, we have a really big question, like how do you define employee engagement? And it was one of those that just kind of struck me in between the eyes of going, well, I think I know. Why don't you go answer that yourself? And so whenever they came back through a lot of surveys, focus groups, and all of that, what I thought and what a lot of the leaders thought was a definition of engagement was not. It was participating in meetings, going here, doing this, sharing on social media, all of that. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of touchy-feely, but the data was that they wanted psychological safety and a place to belong. And so if I were to have answered that problem statement, I would have been going headlong east whenever the answer was headlong west. So I think that really listening to the story that data tells you is paramount. So that way, like I said earlier, you're not wasting time, but you're not trying to address the wrong problem.
Well, everybody, I am declaring the unmuting competition officially open. So please build your conversation. Just pretend you're having a glass of water, an ice cream, and having fun. Who wants to go? Jen.
Yeah. I mean, to Trent's point, which I think is a phenomenal way to start the conversation, there's also the side of it where if you have enough data to make those informed decisions, you can start to actually anticipate the challenges that you're going to start to face. So for instance, if you are already kind of maybe hearing rumblings from one or two people about feeling burnt out or feeling like, one team is, not feeling as supported as they are, if you already are gathering that data, you might be able to see that even ahead of people speaking up about being burnt out, or when it even gets to a head and they're, feeling very disengaged or doing the whole quiet quitting thing. So I think that's really where I've been seeing the data helping me at most is thinking about things like turnover and the skills gaps and burnout right now.
Yeah, absolutely. There are predictive analytics out there that you can forecast flight risk, for example. That's something that we try to look at as well. And when you triangulate that with some other data, such as quality of managers and quality of feedback and things like that, you can really build that picture. And I think that many HR departments have barely scratched the surface there. I think we need to really think holistically, not only about core metrics such as turnover, engagement scores, that's all important, but also get feedback about the actions that we have been taking and be agile and adapt to that kind of feedback. I also recognize that takes a lot of effort too, and a lot of focus in the organization. So I'll try not to, overstate it, but I think if organizations are having challenges in specific areas, that's where you really need to start asking questions differently.
I think, in my experience working with clients, we spend a lot of time thinking and defining what do we really want to measure. And we use a lot the reference of sports, right? For different sports, you need to measure different things. But it's more important about, then we go to the conversation of what do you want to do with the data, right? Do you want to advise? Do you want to coach? Do you want to transform? So it's very important that organizations have these conversations from the very beginning when they start defining what data they want to start collecting and at what levels. We see a lot of organizations collecting a lot of data at the org level, but we know that performance, we know that innovation, we know that engagement actually happen at the team level, right? So that's also something very important to understand, right? When you look at individual KPIs or individual data from your employees, when you look at company data or when you look at team data, it's not an easy task, as my peers here are mentioning. There's a lot of energy and investment that needs to be there, and therefore we need to be mindful as well that sometimes we need to prioritize.
Well, listening to your answers, I'm tempted to take half a step back and organizational innovation is one of those expressions that is so intensely and often used that it comes with a baked-in assumption that it's self-explanatory, it's organizational innovation. But I have the feeling that it's a little bit of a more complex conversation. So I just want to take a few minutes and really look through your lens. What is the organizational innovation approach that you bring into this conversation? What it is and what is often mistakenly taken for? And Jen, I would invite you to lead us into the demystifying of organizational innovation.
Yeah, well, I think before you even go into that part of it, I think part of this kind of transformation that's been happening is, a lot of times when I would go into decision-making skills, I would use my gut more than anything. And I think that leaders had been doing that as well. And so I would be actually working with a lot of stakeholders who are like, well, I just feel like this, like it's got to be this, or like one person told me this, and they're weighing that bias. And that, like, I would start the conversation. I'd start from like below zero, basically, because I'd have that bias and it would kind of knock that innovation almost out of it. Whereas now if I get kind of that hurdle, I guess, to put that point on, I'm actually coming back really quickly with, oh, I understand that you were feeling this way, but if you look over here at all of this data, it actually is telling a very different story. And I think going back to, Trent's point of the storytelling side of it, it's really important to have that narrative and to understand, what problem you're trying to solve, and then have that data to kind of back it up, but also not be able to manipulate it in a way that it skews your bias that way too. Sorry, that was really convoluted, but I'm just tossing it out there.
Yeah, and it's funny, Jen, when you were saying that, I thought about the quote from the Netscape CEO. He is famous for telling people that if we're going to go with someone's gut, we're going with mine. If you want to make an argument, bring the data. And I think that especially in HR, for people who have been in HR for a while, we kind of go, oh, I've seen this before. And I would say probably up until about 4 years ago, that's probably the case. 80% of the time, you could probably shoot from your gut and hit your target. The pandemic really kind of messed all of that up because it it's like we shifted to a different timeline, and like I don't recognize anything, and whenever I don't recognize patterns, I go back to the data and say, okay, there's got to be something here that I'm not seeing. And that's also true for for HR, because whenever I do a lot of coaching on the data aspect for HR organizations or even talent organizations, one of the biggest complaints is, well, my client's saying this and my client's saying that. Data allows you to go on the offense and say, here's what's actually going on, and here are some recommendations based on the data of how I think that we can overcome this. Anything from turnover to quick quits to sentiment analysis. I think, Joe, you mentioned kind of doing it in different little pockets of, the turnover in relation to age groups, to particular managers, and then also using that predictive analytics. I think that if we go and leverage the data, it puts us more in a business I can never say that word, business consultant mindset. There we go. And we're going on the offense rather than how HR is typically seen, which is very reactive and very behind the curve. And we've got to speak the language of our clients. These people talk P&Ls, numbers all day long. If we're speaking the same language, then they're going to see us with higher credibility.
Yeah, and what I've seen success with is bringing them along the way, right? So it's not just about making that presentation with a glossy PowerPoint, and hoping that, all of a sudden, the skies will open and they'll see the way. It's even just having those interactions. And to your earlier point, Jen, when you're seeing some skepticism from leaders, or they're going with their gut, take them along. Hey, you know what? I hear you on that. Let's check it out. Let's get under the hood here and see what might be going on. Maybe there's something that explains what you're feeling. Sometimes you might be able to validate what they're saying, other times not. But over time, you build that trust and credibility where then you can really become that partner to help them think more futuristically.
I think there's overall an opportunity to educate business people, right? I think when we all had the opportunity to go through business education, or many of us went through that business education, there's a lot of time that you invest around financials, around KPIs, around operations. But then when you go to HR, when you go to people, universities or colleges tend to go to the qualitative side, leaving that quantitative knowledge outside of the curriculum. So when we start working with leaders in organizations, they just don't know how to do that. They're not enabled to make people decisions with data. They go to what they know. So there's a huge opportunity to start embedding people analytics in the curriculum in business, colleges and universities. But at the same time, organizations have to invest in their people as they develop leadership skills, because we know there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of leadership development. They need to start including how to make people decisions using data. That's at the core of success.
David, it's hilarious that you said that, because I remember taking over a team, and it was a team of 10. And, I was going in and going, okay, this is kind of what the data's saying. I want you to get into it. Just my normal MO. And 4 of them pulled me aside, and one of them said it so eloquently. She says, I got into HR because I like business, but I didn't like math. I said, then you're on the wrong team, sweetheart, because this is the language that we use. So I agree with you that we can't just expect the industry that's not been very data focused to all of a sudden one night wake up and now they understand regression analysis. That's not the case.
Yeah, I had to basically, partner up with a friend in finance and say, like, help me figure out how to make a business case. Because, I've never had to do one before. Didn't have to do one in school. So, where do you even start with this? And it was about kind of, building that trust and getting that going that really helped me to establish myself as, seen as a peer to the leadership team, and seen as an equal peer, not just the fluffy, person in the room, basically.
And if you do it right, you start to see the engagement. They'll come to you and say, have you thought about this question? What does the data say about that? So once you start opening that crack in that door, just be prepared, because the data that you're giving them is going to cause more questions than it's going to give answers. But that creates this symbiotic relationship. And like I said, it kind of brings you both at par with each other. At least that's been my experience.
I love that all of you brought the conversation to the point where you highlight questions. So in both previous conversations, there was consensus over the power of asking meaningful questions. So I would really ask you, to give our audience, do you have some maybe even signature questions that you use in your conversations with your stakeholders to really elevate the discussion around data? And Joe, if you want to lead us into this.
I ask why a lot because I want to first see where is their bias, and so what am I up against potentially when I'm partnering with a business leader, but also it can help uncover areas that can help me figure out what data points to pull in, and I also like to ask them if you could for the given problem, if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change here? And so that again tells me a little bit more context into what's going on within the team, some of the personality, some of the things that might not be easily uncovered by the data, but can help again inform the direction of the analysis.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
I think typical question is, what is keeping you awake at night, right? What is that business challenge that you're trying to solve? What is that priority that you have? And I think that just leads to a conversation, right? I think sometimes as experts in people analytics, we tend to go also very much to the quantitative side, and we forget the qualitative, and that we're talking about people, that we're talking with leaders that they're also struggling managing their teams, right? So I think it's about engaging in that personal conversation about, hey, let me help you. Let me be here and build a foundation regarding analytics, regarding people, to set you up for success, right? Innovation can be one of those, right? Performance can be another one. Going to a new market, etc. So yeah, for me, it's really about that, right? Engaging in a more natural way.
Building off of what David just said, I think about like the key factors. So like, what are the key factors that might influence kind of your decision or sway it at all? And then also, how do you weigh those factors? Because there's definitely going to be one that they are potentially going to weigh more than the other. And so understanding kind of their thought process and how they're going to even start to make that decision is going to help me guide the conversation. And going back to Trent's point about the narrative again, like that's going to help me to think about like, what do I need to make sure I put in that narrative, and how much do I weigh that versus what I maybe just touch upon, very briefly.
It's funny, in Catholic school early in my career, I remember one of the sisters telling me that I would never get far in life by asking as many questions as I did. And now that's what I spend most of my day doing. So like Joe said, I like to ask why, but I like to do the 5 whys to really kind of get down to the root, because you'll find that the more you ask and the more you dig, it forces them to really think through what's the real problem statement, not the superficial one. You could probably get that with just a clean sweep of data, but really digging into what that root is, that opens up sometimes Pandora's box in terms of insights. The other thing too is, like, if they come to me with a problem statement, it's not a question, it's kind of a nice command, but I go, unpack that for me. And I don't give them any direction or anything. I just want to see, like, where's their mindset. And just lastly, it's very natural, I think, for a lot of us in data to start solutioning, of going, this is how I'm going to get the data, here's how I'm going to visualize it and all that. One of the ways that I like to try and slow myself down is I actually write the questions that the client is asking me. Because whenever I go and I put it into a dashboard, I put the question and then I put the data underneath it. So that way it kind of affirms to them that I was listening and I was following kind of this scientific method of testing their hypothesis.
What great questions. Now we are approaching the middle of our conversation, and I'm curious. You teased us a little bit on this one, but what kind of new strategies can data help uncover? And I think, David, you haven't been the first one yet, so please lead us into this.
Yeah, well, I would say what strategies would not solve people analytics, right, or data. We need to always remember that organizations are run by people, right, and we need to set them up for success. The success of an organization, the success of a leader, the success of a team, it's based on their people, their capabilities, their skills, understanding the structure, understanding the strategy. So as we're thinking in this way, people analytics, it's really at the center of making that happen, right? Every single business strategy. Now, I don't want to say that, hey, people analytics is going to solve your strategy. It's going to solve how you're going to go to market, but definitely it's going to make sure that the foundation is solid, that you understand where you have gaps, where you need to invest, and how you need to reach out to your people. So yeah, it's at the core of a foundation.
I think it's a tool in a larger toolbox, right? So I was just joining at the end of the AI session, right? So I'm thinking people analytics plus AI. I mean, the sky's the limit there, right? So you could collect a lot of important data throughout the year and years about your teams, how they're performing, where the talent gaps are, how jobs are evolving, and triangulate that with data insights. And you can really build a strategy around your talent pipelines, right? And thinking about what are your future needs, what are your future needs for the company going to be, and how does that align with your business strategy?
And I think, you bring a fantastic point. If a lot of times what organizations do, and even the best data people, is they look at data in a silo, and the silo is their organization. Well, that tells you about your organization, but doesn't tell you how it is in relation to the market, to competitors, to outside of the market competitors. The thing that's really interesting to me now is the ease of availability of information, using AI to pull all that information in together, get it to synthesize, and then spit something out. The amount of time that I have gained back in my life from Gen AI is unreal. Just think of like 10 years ago, sitting down with 16 different spreadsheets and trying to put it all in this quantitative formula. Now AI just zips that sucker right back out, which I like, because it gives me more time to really kind of hone in on what's the data telling me, rather than how do I prep the data to get it visualized to actually try to get me to some type of answer or solution, to that point. And David, I like what you said about data should not solve the problem, but it should kind of give us some indications. I think I'm really bad about that, looking at how is the data going to solve the problem. So you've kind of put like a little mental ninja that's kicking me all around my head now, thinking of how do I stop doing that.
When you talked about silos just then, I was like, but I feel like I also in HR have a lot of different data silos within like the tools that I have, because they just don't talk to each other. And as much as I want to bring like solutions here, I think one of the challenges that I will face sometimes is like, I have this data from my HRIS, I have data from my applicant tracking system, I have data from kind of my, pulse surveys that I'm getting, and they don't talk to each other. And so there's still a part of me and my skills gap that I'm like, well, how am I able to have this all come together and, paint a picture of all of the data that I want to see? Like, I sometimes feel like, and maybe I'm alone here, but I get very overwhelmed sometimes by the data as well, and kind of shifting the conversation a little bit. But I think it's probably worth it of like, can I ask the group here, like, how do you not get overwhelmed by data? Because like sometimes it feels like, yeah, I just don't even know where to go sometimes.
Thank you,
It's like
Jen.
like a green stop sign sometimes.
So let's take this wonderful question from Jen. How do we not get overwhelmed by data? What do we do?
I'm taking notes for whoever answers on this one, so I have nothing.
No, I'll say, we tend to spend a lot of time talking about data, and we need to start talking about insights, right? Data is definitely, again, a foundation for people analytics. It's a foundation for HR. But whenever we go to the business, whenever we go to the leadership team, we need to talk about insights. We need to talk about the so what, and sometimes we miss that part. And I mean, I'm guilty of that. I have a spreadsheet with survey data, and you have no idea how much fun I'm going to have on a Saturday afternoon working on that. And then I want to show every little single aspect that I found and see the correlation here, see the gap here, comparing to the benchmark. And that is when sometimes data gets overwhelmed. So we always have to think about the so what, right? What's the story? What's the insight? What's the implication to the business? And when we start going with that mindset to our clients, internal, external, it will resonate a lot more. It is our role to become less overwhelmed by making sense of that data.
And I think it's also going into your activity with a mindset, right? So I'll block off some time just to play around. And we're going through exactly what you're describing, Jen. We have a lot of information in our data warehouse that comes from multiple systems, right? But I go into it just out of curiosity. What does this mean? If I triangulate this information with this data, what kinds of insights might I glean without any expectation of any kind of output? But then when it's time to partner with a business leader, right? That's where I struggle with this too, just staying focused on the question at hand. And I think having that clear question, to Trent's earlier point, the why or the what, staying anchored to that, and also giving myself a timeline. Like, I have to get this out by the end of the day. And however that ends up is how it will end up for this conversation. And I have a clear picture in mind. It's not bulletproof, but it will, it does help me stay sane with the amounts of information that I'm working with.
Well, during the first conversation today, and David, you mentioned insights. Our speaker colleague, Anuj, said that whenever he thinks about analytics, he thinks about these three layers: hindsight, insight, and foresight. And one thing that you made me remember is, when I'm caught up in a conversation around data and analytics, building a little bit on Joe's point, I ask two questions. What is your cutoff date, and what is your cutoff data? And we take it from there. Trying to make the conversation a little bit actionable and a little bit practical, and you won't be surprised by the fact that there is a question around skills and capabilities. So I am not necessarily so interested in the usual suspects of skills and capabilities when it comes to talking data. But can you think of an underdog skill or an outlier skill that is not necessarily the first one that pops in people's mind when they think about, doing meaningful data work inside organizations? And I will just let you pop in as inspiration strikes. Then, Trent.
Yeah, I don't think it's a skill. I think it's more of a competency of intellectual curiosity. The people that kind of think of things and you're like, okay, where in the world did that come from? Their mind going to a different place and wondering, they'll need to scratch that itch. And so if you teach them how to go and retrieve the data, put it in there, it's almost like cathartic for them. And David, when you were talking about putting data together on a Saturday afternoon, I'm Sunday afternoon, and it's cathartic for me. It's like, I can kind of turn on that side of my brain. I don't have to be social. So I think, finding someone that's got the intellectual curiosity, because they're not going to let go of the problem until they have as much data as they think that they could get within a 95, 96% chance of giving some direction based off of it. A lot of people look for that beautiful mind or, the goodwill hunting. Those are few and far between. I think finding someone who has a passion for getting answers is probably the big, if they have that, you can teach them all the rest of the stuff. And I mean, hell, you've got programs now that'll do just about everything for you. All you got to do is know how to ask the question.
I think also presentation skills are so important too, right? And look, we live in this panel here. We live in this world day in and day out. But I'll tell you, there are some conversations I have with data geeks, and they lose me after a while, where you go too deep, or you have all this information, but it's not laid out in a way that you can really have a meaningful conversation. So I think it's taking all that complexity and distilling it down to the essentials for your audience is key to being effective.
I definitely think anyone that's interested in the data track in college, take some design courses, some UX design, all of that, because you need to put yourself into the end user to say, how do I need to display the information in a way that they understand, not necessarily how you understand.
Oh, there's a competition there.
I'm gonna put another vote to curiosity. Definitely, that makes a huge difference, and not only from a data perspective, but from a methodology perspective, right? I love when my teams come back and say like, "Hey, I faced this challenge with data, or Tableau, or Power BI, or any other tool was not enough, so I was searching, and then there's this other tool, and I already solved it." So that is just gold.
I love that. I was going to jump in and say, like, as a visual learner, like someone who like loves to look at pretty charts, that is definitely a part of it for sure. But the other part, I want to call back to actually what David had said earlier, where he was talking about how you're talking to different people with different backgrounds. And I think from a communication standpoint, it's also really imperative for you to know your audience. And so if you are like Joe and you're talking to like all these amazing data geeks and kind of being able to speak at kind of that level, that's really great. But then you need to be able to transition that to maybe someone who is not as technical and maybe is not even like data literate potentially on that end. And you have to be able to kind of communicate it in a way that they're going to understand it as well. So you kind of have to have both of those sides, and also maybe get that kind of cross-functional understanding of how the data is going to even make people feel as well. I know I talk about the gut side of it, but like you're presenting this data and it potentially will have an emotional effect on them too. And so really understanding how that's gonna go along with kind of their level of technical aptitude. So.
And Jen, I think you also bring up kind of following that train of thought, some humility of you understand the data because you just process it. It's how your brain works. Not coming off as kind of being that cocky SOB that everyone knows has the answer, but no one wants to go to because they don't want to be talked down to from the ivory tower. So there does need to be some humility and seeking first to understand before trying to be understood.
Can you think back to a situation where you came up against a misassumption or a misperception or a miss something in regards to data that you had to address head on and dismantle, and if anything comes to mind and you want to share it, then I would really open up the floor to you.
Are you talking about maybe a preconceived idea that we had as the data people that the data proved wrong, or something that the client brought to us that we were like, hey, no, the data actually says something else?
Yes. So back to your point with, unpack this for me. Wherever your mind takes you, then that's a story we will take.
I was going to say, did you listen to the previous answer where we said we like clarity, and then you just answer a 2 question with yes? Like my brain just shut down. It's like, hang on, wait.
Cannot compute.
Yeah, cannot
Yes,
compute.
Whatever. I mean, both scenarios equally apply, and maybe this is a bias that data people cannot be proven as having misperceived or misassumed something about their data?
Well, I mean, one of the rules of a data person is if you are wrong, change the data. Totally kidding. Totally kidding.
I think I would say sometimes we need to look at the world in a different way. So, for example, when we talk about innovation, if we want to measure performance when it comes to innovation, typically we're going to look at how many, I don't know, we're trying to innovate a new product. There's a lot of budget, there are different teams working, and we're measuring how many successful products are coming out from each team. But when we look at innovation, or where we think about innovation, a failure might be a success as well. So those sometimes are different ways of looking at the data. The data again is quantitative and it's strong, but sometimes we're coming with some biases or preconceptions about success, about performance, about skills that we need to challenge ourselves. So my example will be just that, the innovation, right? Failure needs to be included in a way of learning for the organization, learning for the team, then see the relationship, of course, to success when it comes to products that are really going to market and are really creating revenue. But failure is a learning, and we need to measure it as well.
I see a lot of thoughtful nodding.
Well, he just threw another mental ninja in my head, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to write this down and think about it later. Thank you, David.
I just was thinking about the failure side and was thinking back to, I've leveraged data for like, hey, where I need to like put my, sourcing money moving forward, like, hey, this really good resource. And I remember one resource that I used to use all the time because I would pull a report in my applicant tracking system and say like, these are getting the most conversions. But I would only pull it and say like conversions to like applicants, basically, not like conversions to like getting to like the hired part. And so I kept putting my money in this one source that I'm not going to name because people still use it. But I kept putting my money in it. I was like, why am I not getting like the hires? Like, I don't understand. Like this is what the data is saying. And I was like, oh, I'm only looking at like one part of it. Like that's a big old fail on my end, first off, and like a learning I keep with me now. But like when you brought that up on the failures, I was like, well, I'll just share that here. Like, there you go.
Thank you.
It's interesting when I started doing the beta for sprint recruiting, we did measure failures. Where did we miss the mark? So, assigning a point value to, the priority roles, it gave me a data point as a talent leader that I've never had before. This is how the client defines success. We hit 60% of that. Why? Before it was, we filled 30 jobs just like we did last week, fantastic job team. But it was missing the mark from the clients. So just that one data set. And really they were responsible for assigning the priority. My job was to measure the results against that definition. And whenever I started looking and going, okay, well, we missed 2 sprints in a row. I don't like that trend. What's going on? Then I started looking at some of the other root causes. Do we have enough applicants? Are they spending enough time sourcing? Do I need to reallocate some of my budget? Do I need to reallocate some additional headcount to this particular initiative? Because apparently, this team may be too small to hit what is expected out of our clients. So, measuring that failure actually is, that's some pretty wise advice, because I think we focus so much on the success, we forget all the different failures that we had to get to that particular success, because the bruises and everything heal by the time you're ready to cross the finish line.
I have a question, and I'm still struggling with wording it in my mind. So bear with me. Earlier today, I was on a podcast about change and change work and my professional love. And I did say that a lot of pressure is created within change work because of very pure binary thinking. So I looked at the title of this panel and it was Innovate or Stagnate. And I'm curious, isn't there anything in between innovation or stagnation that data can meaningfully drive?
There is 1 degree between stagnation and innovation. Think of boiling water. Think of freezing water. It takes 1 degree change for it to change its complete state of matter, right? Or mass, or I didn't do physics well, so statistics was my thing, leave me alone. But, to go from ice to water, to boiling water, to steam, the same is true. And I think that one key piece of data can be that leverage point that will change that degree to get the water to whatever is going to be most useful for you at that point. That's always, whenever I'm struggling with the data, or I'm struggling why I'm being asked to look at this data, I always kind of keep that back in the back of my head of going, okay, this is this 1 degree, and I need to get over my mental challenge and my own bias against this, or just pissed off that I'm having to do it. I need to get over that because it's going to potentially change something, and I want to be on the side of that change. I want to be on the side of that innovation.
Yeah, and these efforts, to your point, try and compound over time, right? So even think of technology. Gosh, I just had the iPhone I just had my doorbell just rang. My new iPhone's here, and so I think about the 14 versus the 15, right? And can debate about how much of an improvement that was, but even incremental improvements over with each version. When you compare like the 15 to the 6, my goodness, it's like light years ahead. And so one of the challenges that I have as a leader in this space is really with not having the perfect be the enemy of good, right? Just making sure that there's always some sort of progress or even incremental improvement where I can control it, and then that will build over time.
And it's also a mindset, Manola, for change. There are some people that if you go cha, it's like immediately the fence goes up, because maybe they've been on the wrong side of change, or they felt shortchanged. I think that part of the mindset for people that are growth oriented is that they want to always be in that innovative zone, as chaotic and as frustrating as it is sometimes. Because if you're in that innovative thing, you can't see in front of you because no one's ever been there. There's no street lights. There's no guardrails. You're trailing the past. So for some of us adrenaline junkies, we kind of like that. For others, it is, no. I'll let all of you do all the work. So sometimes leveraging the data helps them understand that we do have, at least we know we should be going north. Now, which road we should take, guess what? There's no road, so we can't make a wrong decision. We're just going to find this out together. But giving them that data of saying this is at least the right way, sometimes it's the first step to get them to change that 1 degree.
I love that. And Trent, I'm sorry I pick on words, but you said, is this the correct decision? So one question that I keep in my mind, and I oftentimes ask that as I sit in conversations around data, is how people want to go for almost like the foolproof, correct decision. How do you feel about that?
Number one, those exist. I've never had something where this is the absolute definitive clear way to go. Never. I have this is what the data's saying. Here's the negative. I think, Joe, you mentioned it earlier that you have to kind of present both sides, not this is the way that we should go, but this is the way we should go because the data also says this is not the way to go and here's why. So, I mean, if anyone's ever had data just go, here's a glowing answer, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. No,
definitely not. And I think that's, we're not going to talk a lot about AI, but I think that's really what's going to happen with AI, right? AI is really going to help us manage tons of data. It's really going to help us bring insights. It's going to help us identify risks. But at the end, people are still going to make those decisions based on more information that they have, that conceptual thinking, and balancing the risk, right? Yeah.
Well, sadly, we are, if we're lucky, about 8 minutes away from wrapping this conversation up. And I would really just want to make sure that people take all this energy and all this inspiration and all your insights and can put it into something concrete. So what would you invite people to do, maybe just for that 1 degree, starting tomorrow?
Jen said she wanted to go first. I need time to think.
That's gonna be the worst one because I'm gonna go first. It's okay. I will go first. Because I think that to like wrap up some of the things that we've talked about today. First is to not be scared of the data. Embrace the data. I think that's important, especially from like a not as I'm not a data connoisseur like the other panelists are. I feel like I'm still in my like learning stage here. But then also on the learning side, continuously be learning and understanding and asking why on that side. I think that also would be very beneficial for everybody here. So, all right, Trent, you're going next.
So you did a great job. You did a fantastic job, right off the cuff. Innovation, that 1 degree. I think one is get over your aversion to data. It's not going to bite you. It's not going to hurt you. It's just going to be there. So listen to the story. Think of it as a storyteller. If you are not accustomed to having to deal with data, there is a plethora of YouTube, LinkedIn, Coursera. I mean, you name it. There's all kinds of free resources out there that will get you at least up to par with kind of taking those baby steps, and then just enjoy the ride. You know, you're going to hit a couple of bumps. Everyone here on the panel has gone down the data track and made a major goof up. All of us have done it. You can recover from it. It's okay. It's not perfect. The numbers and the data is perfect. How you go about interpreting it is not. And I think that was the biggest distinction that I had to learn, is that, you know, I think, David, you said, you know, kind of with AI that, you know, it's going to kind of help with that, but humans are still going to make the decisions based off of the data. My concern on AI is that we will get to binary. You know, that there is some of that qualitative stuff, some of that gut stuff that you still need to be able to infuse into the data to make sure that it's fully accurate, not just data by itself. So hopefully I did not talk in circles there, because it sounded a lot better in my head.
You did not talk in circles. I think my advice, and I'm going through that same journey as well, is we are very good at advising organizations and leaders how to make talent decisions based on data, but sometimes we don't do that ourselves. So we need to start with our own teams. We need to look at our own data, the performance of our people, and make sense out of that and start making those decisions. And that is just gonna help a lot on that journey about moving from data to insights, moving from data points to recommendations, to stories, to advice, right? Leaders and organizations are not expecting only that we come with data and that's it. They're expecting our expertise. They're expecting our advice. They're expecting to share stories. So starting with our own teams, it's a good starting point.
Mm.
Yeah, and I'd say build the habit of talking.
Joe, you're on mute, but that was an amazing strategy. It was, I would say, build a habit of, and then you went on mute, and I was like, this is wonderful for building suspense. So please.
I don't know how, I must have gotten a little too happy with my hands here on my keyboard, but the you know, build the habit of talking about data, right? And so anytime, you know, if you're an HR generalist, for example, and you're talking about employee relations issues or, you know, talent development issues, make sure that you're talking about it in context of the data that you're seeing, right? You know, if you're in talent acquisition and, you know, you're working with stakeholders on filling roles, use some data insights to talk about the, you know, quality and quantity of the candidates that you're seeing, the data as far as the talent, the external talent pool that you're seeing. So use hard numbers. And I think that can also help not only shift your mindset, but shift the mindsets of others around you so that you're on the same page.
Thank you all so very much. And we're a couple of minutes away from wrapping this conversation up and from wrapping the first day of our summit up. And I have the last question, I promise. Now, this is an icebreaker that I use in my work. I just take the topic of the workshop. And here's the question. If data as a word didn't exist, what is minimum 1, maximum 3 words that you would use to convey the same meaning? Especially when you go into a conversation where data is like, no. So data as a word doesn't exist. How would you convey the same meaning? I will give you a few seconds. We will go counterclockwise. So we will go Trent, David, Jen, and Joe.
Not fair. That was a mushroom. That is such a mushroom question that I need time to kind of like. Where did you come up with that? Like, whoa, that was a good one. I don't get stumped.
Thank you. So take a few seconds. I will just use this time to thank everybody for being here, whether now live or later on the recording. If you feel like you joined a little bit later and you missed out on an amazing conversation, yes, you're right. You missed out on an amazing conversation, but you find the recording on hackinghrlab.io or on our LinkedIn space. So Trent, you either give me thumbs up if you want to go, or we can have a volunteer pioneer for this one.
I would love to hear someone else go first. I am really struggling with this one.
I'll just take a crack at this. I view data as an input, and that the quality of that input can depend heavily on the person providing the input and the tools available to collect that input.
Thank you, Joe. Then, David, let's do this popcorn style.
I will say stories. For me, data, it's the collection of stories that happen in real life, just instead of writing it in words, writing it in numbers.
Wonderful.
I think I'm going to go with details, because data is in the details, the specifics.
Awesome.
I was going to say story, but somebody already took it. Connection points, maybe. It's kind of think of your destination as the answer that you want to get to, and the data or the different stops along the way.
This is wonderful. Jen, Joe, David, and Trent, it was a joy. It was a privilege. I look forward to welcoming you again soon. I look forward to welcoming as many of you as you will have the time and the headspace for our second day tomorrow. And in the meantime, take good care of yourselves and look for meaningful data. Thank you, everybody.
And next time we'll all wear blue. We did green this time, so we'll do blue next time.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Barbara, for taking such great care of us. Thank you.